Hello, and welcome to the Sovereign Collective podcast, where we bring you real, raw truth for your self-empowerment. I'm your host, Sasha Calavoda, and I believe that you can stand on your own 2 feet, but that you don't have to do it alone. I love learning from people who continually strive to raise the bar, to go against mainstream thinking, and who dare to question the general consensus. People who risk being ridiculed or even risk the loss of their professional status as they bravely question the common narratives and challenge the rest of us to expand our minds and to reconsider what we think we already know. Join me in learning how to take control of your health and your mind so that you can have the energy to think more clearly and the confidence to step up and take responsibility for all aspects of your life. We promise to never censor here because I believe you are strong enough to hear the real, raw truth to make up your own mind. If you like what you find throughout the Sovereign Collective podcast, then please share with your friends and family. I so appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And now, on to the show. Hi, y'all. This is Sasha here for 2 quick announcements before we get on to our interview for today. First of all, if you are looking for quality supplements, quality tonic herbs, some specialty food items, and you're in and around Calgary, then please go check out Lotus Herbal Health, a great family-run store that has 2 locations in Calgary. You can find them at lotusherbalhealth.ca to find out where their locations are, or you can shop online and they will pretty much deliver anywhere. So quality supplements, tonic herbs, great staff. Check out lotusherbalhealth.ca. Secondly, I want to announce the relaunch of my program called Your Conscious Pregnancy and Parenting Guide, which consists of experts in their fields around the world on consciousness and parenting and education and nutrition and dentistry and homeopathy and more. This is a program I created after my son was born about 10 years ago, a little bit more than that. And I am now very concerned after the events of 2020 for our future generations. And I believe the time is now for conscious parenting and for conscious parents to rise up and to take back our pregnancies and our births and our parenting and the resilience of our children and of future generations. The time is now. We change the course of history by changing the course of our future generations. And we do that by consciously raising them, consciously birthing them, consciously conceiving them, feeding them good food, and taking back the responsibility of raising healthy, well-adjusted, robust people. Resilience. It's time to build resilience. So please go check out sovereigncollective.org/get the guide, and you'll be able to check out all of the amazing material in there. It's time for us to understand how our worldviews are formed, how our self-views are formed, and how to impact that and how that impacts the society on a whole. So check it out, sovereigncollective.org/get the guide. And now on to the show. Hey everyone, it's Sasha here for another interview for the Sovereign Collective podcast. Thank you for joining me. And today I am here with a wise woman. Her name is Sherry Strong, and she is somebody that I've had the pleasure to start to get to know just very recently through an organization that we are both working with locally, which is also an organization on a grander scale that to create a better future together. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But why I wanted to interview Sherry is because, well, she has a whole lot of experience behind her, but she's also doing some really important work currently with the Children's Health Defense and just has a passion for getting to truth and helping people with their struggles and coming to real solutions for people in different areas of their life. She has so much experience. I don't really even know where to start. I mean, she's overcome her own battles with sugar addiction. She has been a personal chef. She's done coaching. She's talked on worldwide stages, stages the world over, shared the stage with some pretty prominent people. She is now working, as I said, with Children's Health Defense, with Life Force Canada. She's actually recently been in the care of a new little baby, another story there, like so many things. And so this is a woman who is living with intention and who has also overcome a lot of, let's just say, there's been color in her past, shall we say. If you want to learn more about that, she might share some today, but also on her Facebook page is a very vulnerable live that she posted recently about where she's been in the last 20 or so months during this crazy time of our lives that we're all experiencing. So let's do some more specifics here. Sherry was the former Victorian Chair of Nutrition Australia, Melbourne, President of Slow Food, curator and co-founder of the World Wellness Program, and sat on boards that consulted on public health policy to the Australian government. She is the author and illustrator of Return to Food, founder of Sweet Freedom Life, and a serial entrepreneur with her most recent business, Living Immunity, which is her new line of supplements that we'll also talk about today. She is passionate about the wellness of humanity and the globe and dedicated to making a difference using the resources and skills accumulated over the past 4 decades. So I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. It has so many possibilities of where we're going to go. So thank you, Sherry, for joining me today.
Thank you, Sasha. I actually feel seen. You know, some people read bios and some people actually see you. So that's a real honor. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. And that's what I do this for, to highlight people doing their amazing work. So thank you for that. That is a compliment that I will accept. So, okay, Sherry, so you have had an interesting life, a busy life. You are a driven woman and you've gone through all sorts of, I don't know, experiences in your life. So where do we start? Like maybe talk about your history. I think a lot of people can relate to some of the challenges that you've overcome in your past to become the person you become and the author that you are and the speaker that you are. So maybe we can start there.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm like, whoa, you know, that expression, death and life flashing, your whole life flashing through your eyes. While you were reading that, my whole life was flashing through my eyes. And I think I'm just going to start really intuitively and say that I always wanted to have babies. That was my dream. When I graduated from high school, like I actually have dreams when I was 14 years old of feeling this intense love for an infant. And oddly, one of those dreams, I had the baby in a stroller and I was pushing it in winter and the stroller slid down a hill and disappeared. And when I
Wow.
left high school, my grad yearbook, I said I wanted to have 1,000 children, you know, get married, 1,000 children, right?
Mhm.
And sadly, that ability was taken away from me in 1988. I was assaulted in Italy and left with uh, internal situation that sealed my tubes up. And when I was married, I tried to have children. We tried IVF, tried everything, and I couldn't have children. And if I actually look at the difficulties and challenges of my life, that was my deepest and greatest wounding that I've had to overcome. So when you mentioned that I've recently been able to help raise a newborn at, you know, 54 years of age, that was a pretty amazing gift. Yeah, and a sacred gift that I don't take lightly. But it was a deep sadness for me. But again, it allowed me to do a lot of things I never would have, could have dreamed of doing had I had a child and parented in the way I would want to parent. So you know, I was a chef in great restaurants in Melbourne. I went there on a working holiday and ended up marrying, I was married for 11 years and stayed on another 11 years and built a full multimedia career, including the positions that you had mentioned. I had a cooking school and that led to a lot of television. I did 7 television pilots over that time, wrote for magazines and spoke at conferences and basically, you know, was a speaker on the circuit. And I branded myself as a food philosopher. I then came to Canada in 2011. I returned and it was an intuitive hunch. People said, why would you leave all of that and start from scratch as basically an unknown in Canada? And it didn't make sense intellectually, but I'm an intuitive person and, you know, that voice inside me wouldn't shut up until I actually moved home. And I did. And I started another cooking school and started teaching at the Institute of Holistic Nutrition in Vancouver, started a holistic entrepreneurship program for people who wanted to do some of the things that I had done. And then I published my first physical book, Return to Food, and started an online program that helped people learn those food philosophies and become food coaches. And then as things happened, as you mentioned, with COVID, my world kind of tipped upside down because I spent the 4 years prior to COVID working on a program called Sweet Freedom Life. And I had a business partner who just ghosted the business and I couldn't sustain it on my own. And so I thought, well, at least I have my speaking work. And then COVID hit and that was completely wiped out. And so, as I mentioned in, you know, our pre-interview, I started to make decisions based on fear. So I made 3 major decisions based on fear and they all had disastrous results. I worked as a, doing private lifestyle makeovers for wealthy people. And out of fear, I chose three very wealthy, powerful, and morally bankrupt men to work for, and had very different, but also, you know, horrible experiences with that. And finally, my sister invited me to help take care of my parents. And my mother's disabled. She took a fluoroquinolone antibiotic 5 years ago and almost died, heart, kidney, liver failure, and major neurological damage, which meant she couldn't walk on her own, have the full use of her hands. My father couldn't take care of her on his own. And so they were about to face going into a home. And in this climate, I know people who have parents in homes who are no longer with us because they just shortly after the jab. And that was not going to happen on my watch. So I moved to Alberta from Vancouver in the middle of lockdown, in the middle of winter, and started to take care of them. And it started me on a journey of what I would actually say true service. And I just kept looking for opportunities to serve. And I found that in taking care of little Willow, taking care of my parents, then Children's Health Defence and Life Force Canada, and speaking out, within the freedom movement, interviewing, experts, scientists, injury victims, and then this business, which I've been working on for quite a while, but it's come into fruition, Living Immunity. And I'm literally just serving one client at a time. I'm not trying to do anything grand with it, just serve. So I think that's probably brings you up to date.
Okay. And not doing anything grand, but that's where it starts. It's one person at a time. If everybody would just turn the focus within, right? It doesn't take a lot. And then maybe, you reach out to your experts or whatever, but everybody just turn that on. It can be profound and so long. And that's why I called my website, which I haven't really updated in a very long time, In One Generation, because in one generation, we just look at the way we birth our kids, we raise them, like look at your own family, and wow, you could make a big difference. But yes. So you have your Living Immunity supplement line. Now that's live and launched.
It is. Yeah.
So let's talk about that quickly first. So what is the philosophy behind that, and why did you feel the need to bring out another line of supplements?
Thank you. So when I started to see what was in the works in March 2020, because I'd done this consulting to government on public health policy, I knew what was happening in March 2020 wasn't about what they were saying it was about. I just knew that right away. And I started posting right away. And then I started to research, do a massive deep dive of research. And this concept of building our immunity through injecting toxic poisonous substances into the body was so insane to me. It was so insane. And also everything in the narrative was about suppressing the immune system, suppressing the body's natural function to repair, heal, and thrive. So I did this little illustration of a needle, natural living immunity versus toxic immunity. And I had all the things that give you living immunity based on life-giving things. And then the ingredients of a typical vaccine, not even the ones they're producing now, which we know are not vaccines, and they're certainly not what they say they are. And then I did another illustration. I'm an artist as well. So I did another illustration of immunity starts in the soil, really, it starts with the most basic things, air, water, soil. And then I registered the name Living Immunity. And I thought we need to start treating our whole system, the immune system. I'm a believer in terrain theory, so versus germ theory. And I just started to explore what are the things that we can actually do to start building our immunity and finding natural, organic, really quality supplements. Because one of the things I branded myself as this food philosopher, and I was so hell-bent on telling people, it's all about the food and how we live. And I wasn't a big fan of supplements. So with my media profile in Australia, I would be approached monthly, weekly, daily for people that wanted me to promote their line of supplements. And I had an openness to try them, but I never felt I found anything that I would be willing to stake and put my name behind, put my reputation behind. And then one of my students, actually, a former student, had introduced me to some supplements that I started to try that were really good quality. And I started to actually feel and notice a difference. And when I moved to Alberta, especially, I wasn't able to access organic, food like I was in Vancouver and farmers markets year round. And so the ability to get the food that I wanted and even the water here, I have to say, it's just the quality is just really terrible. Tap water.
Oh, and we've got
I
fluoride to
avoid,
deal with in Calgary now, right? Coming
well,
up
and
soon. Like,
yeah,
my God, like we need another thing to deal with. But anyways,
well, and that's what it is. It's like I'm teaching a course right now, and kind of the first module is literally modern living is toxic. There's nothing in our system that hasn't been compromised, from our air, water, soil to, the things we put on our body, the things we wash, our body with, or, there's literally every single thing on the planet has been compromised, and you have to seek out things that don't have toxins in them, and even then, it's hard to know. And so I knew that we needed more than the food piece to help, protect us. And, with EMF technology, it's literally everything from the air we breathe with, geoengineering. And so for me, I believe number one, that we have to stop poisoning ourselves. One, stop poisoning ourselves. So, and that's, limit our exposure to environmental toxins and in foods we eat. Two, we need to nourish ourselves. And without those two, supplementation is limited. And I'm not saying, I've actually seen where supplementation helps people, even though they're still ingesting toxic things and they're not addressing the diet issue. But if you actually want to make the most of your supplement dollar, get the poisons out, start to nourish yourself, and you'll see that they will work far more efficiently. And that's the philosophy I wanted to start it on, because these companies that had approached me always gave lip service to the first two things, because they knew, that while people are toxic and they're not eating well, they're always going to look for a crutch, that will actually help them, in many cases, participate in the behaviors that are creating the problems. And so I actually really want to go to cause and get people to start to remove poisons, and not just physical ones, but mental, emotional, and spiritual ones. So I work with people, the clients that I've worked with in the past, like Theo Fleury and Brett Wilson. I said, those three physical things I talk about are limited unless you start to remove toxicity mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And when you start to remove them in those areas and you start to nourish mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, making changes in the physical becomes so much easier, because you're not triggered as much with addictive responses that, soothe the behaviors.
right,
Yeah.
right. Getting down to that trauma. And we know, for example, in Theo's past, he's
Yeah.
revealed that there's quite a bit of trauma in there. So that's the same thing. That's what I tell people: you're either poisoned or you're undernourished, probably
Yeah.
both. And there's
Yeah.
also these suppressed traumas that are making you
Yes.
physically ill, right?
Yes.
So it's those that, yeah. So
And it's the chicken and the egg. So if you have traumas, you're more likely to engage in addictive and toxic behaviors,
exactly.
right?
Mhm.
So they go hand in hand.
Exactly. Exactly. So if somebody wants to look at your products are at livingimmunity.com, correct?
Yeah,
And is that just
that's
available
right.
online?
It is. Yeah, it is. And you can reach out, and I do, like I said, it's all about service, and it's just me right now. So I'm doing private consultations right now to help, help people get the right fit, not just with the supplements. And often when I work with people, particularly with vax injury and stuff like that, 60% of what I recommend is not something I sell. So,
Right.
one of the things I was really paranoid about is being a person who capitalizes on a tragedy to make money. And it stopped me from promoting my business for a long time. And I worked with a guy named Tad Hargrave,
Oh
marketing
yeah,
for
I know
Victor.
Tad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tad framed it this way for me. He said, well, just tell people, this is what I believe you need to do. I don't care if you actually get the supplements from me. Just get it handled. And as soon as I started to take that attitude with it, it released me from that other, concern,
Right.
and of being perceived. It's, it's a perception issue, and, related to reputation and all those things. But yeah, so
I get it. As well as some pretty valuable services that are being offered right now. I mean, there's a lot of injured folks, and my husband, it's interesting. He does a few things, but coaching is one of the things. And it seems like COVID, divorce, separation, relationship problems might be a whole new area that people need
Yeah,
help navigating.
yeah,
So, I mean, it's a valuable service and it deserves a fair exchange, right?
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think that that's amazing. So are you working now? Do you focus on vax injury to some
They're
degree
coming,
or?
yeah, they're coming to me. I'm being referred, clients, and because I'm interviewing vaccine, injured people too,
Yeah.
that I'm now starting to, have people coming because of that reason. But the bigger picture for me right now, and I know that going forward, it's not just supplementation and diet that's going to help with that. There's a lot of healing modalities that will come into that. But the bigger picture for me is that right now, with all the environmental threats and just the tyranny that's going on, we need to be strong within ourselves. And the tendency for us is to go to addictive substances and behaviors to make us feel better when we're scared, we're uncertain about humanity. And what it does is all those things do is they weaken us. And we
Mhm.
need to be strong. We need to be mentally
Exactly.
sharp. We need to be emotionally, and spiritually strong. And so that's probably my bigger desire to work with people, is to make sure the lions and those fierce mama and papa bears and their
Mhm.
babies are protected and they're strong and they're clear thinking, so they can actually make wise, and strategic decisions for their family and their future.
Right, because you know what making decisions out of fear gets you.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
And the all-knowing they also know that, right? People
Yeah.
don't make wise
Yes.
decisions when they are in fear. They're easily led and they continue to do so. So yeah.
Which is
So, oh, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, just quickly, which is why the liquor stores were always open
Yes,
during the lockdown, and cannabis stores were open, is because they could
yeah,
anesthetize people
of
and weaken
course.
them with those things.
Of course, it's very numbing. And me working with people client wise or customer wise as well too, people are putting on the weight, they're drinking too much wine, they're needing a little bit extra help to get to sleep, so they'll do a few extra puffs, and it's really taking them away from themselves. And so that's a really big thing. I love Kelly Brogan's book name, Own Yourself. It's like, okay, people, it's time to
Yeah,
own ourselves, because you just
yeah,
watch. It's like they say yes, they say go left, you go left, you go right, you go right. It's like, but who are you? Which way do you
mhm,
want to go?
yes,
Right. And building that
yes,
resiliency is such an important thing right now, because
yeah,
they're beating people down. And
yeah.
so I really appreciate the work that you're doing that way. So how did you get involved with Children's Health Defense then? How did that
Uh,
come about?
so I when I was 14, I became religious, and I when I left school, I studied to become a missionary.
Huh?
And then I often joke that I discovered the missionary position and found it much more interesting than the missionary vocation, left religious life, and went to practice that position in Australia. Um, so the truth is after my assault, I'd had such a negative experience with the organization that I was involved in religiously, that I was put off by religion completely. And I never found a religion that I could ever go back to that I felt right in. It just always, for lack of a better word, and I don't mean to offend anyone by this, but it had the same kind of multi-level marketing feel to me that it just didn't resonate with me. But as all of this happened, I truly believe that meditation and prayer, more specifically, has been a coping mechanism and a tool. And ever since I moved to Alberta and moved in with my moved my parents in with me, um, there's a little T-shirt Willow got that said, "I'm still living with my parents," and I thought, well, she actually physically isn't living with her parents, and I am, so I think I'm stretching the truth completely. Anyway, I just started asking, for guidance, asking how I can serve, how I can best use my life, during this time. I asked for a safe passage through these challenging times with grace with my family, and I kept asking how I can serve. And I just kept and kept asking. And then Children's Health Defense came up, and I heard that there was an Alberta Provincial Director. So I reached out to her, and she was actually in my network. Her name is Meta. And I said, I want to help. I just want to help. How can I help? I want to help. And that's how it happened. And she's like, okay, we're about to do some videos right now. And I just put my hand up. And, you know, great experiences in my life have come from being brave, bold, and ignoring that nagging question in the back of my head, who am I to? Because I knew there was something wrong about this, but I wasn't a doctor, I wasn't a nurse, I wasn't an epidemiologist or a virologist. So I kept using that excuse, who am I to speak up? And I really admired Meryl Dorey, who's part of Vaccine Choice Network. She's the head of it in Australia. Love her personality. And I kept thinking, I can do that. I could do that. And so I started to do the interviews for Children's Health Defense. And then that voice started to go away. You know, the voice of, you know, what can I do? How can I serve? And who am I to do whatever? But I just kept asking the question, and then I just keep doing the things that make that voice go away.
Amazing. Yeah. And that's what they want, right? It's like these days, I literally got into an argument on Facebook, which is completely not worth my time, about like this person fighting to leave it to the experts, to don't do your own research. We just have to live. It's been done. It's been done. The debates are over, and the research is clear, and the science is clear. And I'm trying to tell this person, you have every bit of the ability to vet the science and the research, and to use your critical thinking skills and to decide. And
Yes.
she's like, really, I wholeheartedly disagree. And it's like, well, I can't have this conversation. This is
well, she's not the right person to do that. But I've interviewed top doctors and scientists, and I posed the question to them. I said, right now, well, I didn't pose the question. I made a comment, and they couldn't disagree with me. I said, there are truck drivers, you know, and waitresses who've done far more research than top doctors and scientists who are pro-vax. And these are pro-vax doctors and scientists that I've talked to, and they couldn't disagree with me. So there are people with the best educations who are ignoring the science. They're bought and paid for, so they're not looking for it. They're never going to find something they're not looking for, and they're never going to find something they refuse to look for. Whereas they're earnest, smart, intelligent people who, when they ask the right questions and, you know, follow the research that's not industry influenced, they not only are more educated, you know, they're more armed with truth than many people who have a financial, you know, and income-based incentive to ignore the science that isn't industry paid for.
Right. And it's getting to, it's beyond a state of emergency, really. But now with the approval of 5-year-olds, I mean, who in good conscience can put their name to a recommendation like that? I don't even have words to express the grotesque nature of what's going on. I don't even know what to say about it. Like, what is your work with Children's Health Defense digging up around that?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Like, we could do a 4-hour call just on these vaccines and what's in it. But to go to, you know, the CDC, which has a gross conflict of interest. You know, they own patents on vaccines, and they're tied up in all this. And their own people, on over a 4-hour Zoom session, one of the doctors admitted, for every single person they believe is saving, you know, these vaccines are saving, 2 people are dying. That's their words, not ours. Okay, so we know that millions of people are injured and on a path to death because of these vaccines. And that is, you know, now we have like lawyers who I've interviewed, Thomas Renz, who is speaking out about, you know, the depth and deadliness of these shots. And, you know, for Children's Health Defense, we know it has nothing to do with health, that rolling out these injections for children, because healthy children are at 0 statistical chance of dying of COVID. Only children with comorbidities and were seriously ill died of COVID or with COVID. So
Mhm.
with COVID is actually the
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
phrase for it. But like one of the naturopathic doctors, who, he's kind of skirting both sides of the issue. And I interviewed him and I asked him, and because he was saying, I'd only recommend it for vulnerable people. And I said, so I don't understand. We know that these shots are killing healthy people and
Right.
they have toxic, deadly ingredients in them. Why would you recommend them, especially to the vulnerable?
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly. And
and and there, well, he wasn't actually really happy with me for asking the question. You know, um, and that's that's the thing when you start to think critically and you're not afraid to challenge people who have these credentials and letters before or behind their name, and you really just lead with curiosity, the right intention, and truth. um, it reveals itself. It covers things, and who hasn't been deceived, right? Like, I know many times in my life, I've been deceived and I haven't trusted my intuition. And then I've had experiences where, you know, inexplicably amazing things happen when I trusted my, intuition. And I think one of the things, well, I know for the last few hundred years, there's been a campaign to shut down the use of intuition, uh, because you can't be manipulated with your intuition if you're following it.
Mhm.
You can, if you're fully in your head and your mind, well, the mind can justify anything. And, people who are incredibly intelligent and have a nefarious agenda can manipulate any, argument. So I believe that it's super important for us to not just work from our intelligence and our mind, but to be grounded in three things: our mind, our heart, which we know is like a second brain. So it's not just a blood pump, it's not just a seat of emotions, it's a second brain. And our gut, which is, grounding us to the earth and that bodily intuition that has that sense of knowing. I'll give you a little example. Through my infertility and IVF, I had several surgeries, several laparoscopies and surgeries. And, I never questioned what they were doing, and I never questioned what they gave me. I just took it. And I woke up after one laparoscopy from the anesthetic, and a nurse came into the room and she offered me something. And I had this lucid moment, and I went, sorry, what is this? And she kind of looked at me because I came out of this drowsiness from the anesthetic, and I looked at her and I said, what is this? And she said, it's codeine. And I said, I'm allergic to codeine. I stopped breathing. And she said, oh, it wasn't on your chart. And she went over to the chart. It was on my chart.
Oh,
And had I taken that, I would have fallen right back, to sleep, and probably in most likeliness not woken up. But I just listened to my intuition, my body, and I didn't abdicate to the nurse who said it wasn't on you. You know what I mean? Like, I had that moment, and there've been a few moments in my life where I can draw analogies of that. And I think this is where, as a species, that's been driven out of us. And what we need to do is to tap back into that and reintroduce that, and act based on not just your intuition, not just your heart, not just your head, but the combination of three. We were given these amazing gifts. And if we use them, I truly believe, and particularly if we're united and we use them, we
yes.
are an incredible force to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's what I tell people. And if you're not okay, you're not looking at the facts, but just stop and just feel. Like, what does your heart say about what's going on? Who gets to choose who you get to go, who you get to hug, or who you get to have for dinner, or where you get to go? Like,
Yes.
where are the adults here? This is what I don't understand. It's like you're waiting for mommy and daddy government to give you permission. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And just the I mean, we know what makes us healthy. We know it's community, it's purpose, it's providing for self, it's real food, it's air, it's exercise, it's movement, everything that's being restricted. It's
Yeah.
not rocket science. So
And so here's the kind of the line of where we are as a species. We have been fed this, and it really I kind of combine it into germ theory versus terrain theories, like friendly universe, unfriendly universe versus friendly universe. And in
Mhm.
the unfriendly universe, the germ theory, it's all about you can't heal yourself. Mysterious diseases come and get you. Those responses of your body, like a colon cancer, are terrible things that you have no control over. They're not healing mechanisms of the body, right?
Right.
And we can help you. Don't trust yourself. Take this pill, eat this food. Doesn't matter what you eat. We have a pill to treat any symptom that comes from that. Friendly universe is, I have this amazing tool, healing body that just has incredible power to heal and repair itself. And nature has all the resources should I actually be low on this or get sick, or it has everything I need to actually heal myself. But here's the thing, the unfriendly universe is highly addictive, and it
Mm.
requires no self-responsibility, no hard decisions, no discomfort, right? Well, that's not true discomfort, but discomfort is in, taking action yourself. The friendly universe is all about self-responsibility and accountability, and it requires effort, it requires work, and it has way bigger rewards. But it's the unfriendlies, like the no interest, no money up front, get whatever you want and pay for it later.
Right.
Whereas the friendly universe is, you work to create the resources, you do the work, and you get the results, and you can heal, and you can have this beautiful life. But those things that you're choosing aren't highly addictive. They might have good feelings on the other end of doing the work, but they're not highly addictive. And so we've been seduced into this addictive, no responsibility world. And it's not just in our food and our healthcare, it's in our monetary system, in our family system, video games, porn, gambling, all the addictive things, versus choosing, for lack of a better word, I don't mean it moralistically, a virtuous life, a life that you can truly be proud of because you've chosen that, you've worked for that, you've built that.
Exactly. And that's what I tell people. Do you want the substance or the whatever it is to choose you, or do you want to choose it? Who's boss
Yes.
here? Right. And that's
Yes,
the thing. And
exactly.
the the other way, the self-responsibility way, it has vision, it has longevity, whereas the other one is just immediate now, now, now. And we can see right now, even with people capitulating, even people that know how
Yeah.
disgusting these shots are, they're capitulating because they booked that trip. Or,
Yeah.
like it's like you haven't traveled for how long? You can't just, work for the freedom of humanity for just a little bit to do it so that everybody can have what we all have the right to have,
Yeah.
rather than just immediately you need to go and do this now. And this is what we did with that instant gratification,
Yeah.
right? And that
Yeah.
willingness to get uncomfortable. A lot of people aren't doing, they're uncomfortable in other ways, right? There's a lot of
Yes.
discomfort, like you said, but the uncomfortable of putting that effort in and challenging your ideas and your thoughts and your beliefs around what you think the world is, and then just changing your lifestyle, maybe stepping down that lifestyle.
Yes.
It's
And
shocking.
this brings me to a really important philosophy that I teach called the consumption concept and it's based on the fact that right now, most of us, and even myself, I teach this, I'm moving in this direction, but most of us are living in a way we could never sustain naturally in our, if we had to depend on us and our family to sustain. So a simple example is, we'd all eat very differently if we had to source only our own food ourselves, right? If we had
Absolutely.
to grow from seed and produce it. We would use our water differently if we had to haul it, right? We would build our houses differently if we had to source all the own materials for it, and certainly if we had to heat it ourselves, you know. And so it's calling on us, this whole, system that we're living in right now. I actually, I can actually see this predatory class looking at humanity and saying, they're not going to change on their own, so we're going to have to force them to change or eliminate a lot of people, because the earth, if it said, 11 years ago, the world Wildlife Living Planet report said that if China wants to live like the United States, it's going to require 7 planets of resources, right? So
Wow.
for most of our, life, we've grown up and said, you guys in those third world countries live as we say and not as we do. And so they're now starting to develop that. And you can see it's highly hypocritical of the predatory class, because they're not willing to do it themselves. In fact, they're like on the opposite spectrum. And in order for them to live like they want to live, they want to reduce the population to 500 million people, right? So the this whole time is forcing us to look internally and live, like Gandhi said, live simply so others can simply live. You
Yes.
know, um, this idea that we're all going to have 5,000 square foot homes, on a planet it's not sustainable, and drive big trucks, that's not a sustainable plan. But if we do it, there are studies that show 40 billion people can live on this planet sustainably when they're living in harmony with the earth. But the problem is that we become so addicted to this consumptive lifestyle that it almost feels like it's going to take a massive, terrible thing that happens on the earth for people to actually look at themselves. And one of the things I was, sucked into was the whole Greta Thunberg thing. And I went to one of the marches. Greta Thunberg,
Oh,
the
yeah. Okay,
environmentalist.
yeah.
So I went to one of the marches, and I had a big canvas sign that said "Be the change," and it had wings on it, and I went around and had all these felt markers and said to people, "What changes are you making?" And for most people that I asked, it was like you were shining a light into the eyes of a deer. They were like, "What do you mean us? We're here to protest the government to make the change." And it's like, that's not how it works.
Right. No.
And
No.
that was an eye opener for me, is that most people were going there angry at the government for not making a change, driving there in their big trucks, eating, whatever before and after, and not taking personal responsibility.
Right. And just driving the big business that is causing so much of the harm in the first place in all sorts of areas of, whether it be food or fertilizer or, I don't know, gaming, whatever, right? They're just consuming. You're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. And we have friends, and one woman, she's an environmental scientist, and we got it when this all started. We were definitely on different sides of the opinion, shall we say. And she was like, and I'm an environmental scientist. I'm like, but you're if you don't know about genetically modified foods and how that is destroying families and land and the foodscape and the wildlife, like everything, then I'm sorry, then you have not done your work. Like, how are you concerned about the environment and you don't know the impact of that on this planet and its people and its animals, everything, its microbes, everything.
And can I tell you, our university system feeds that whole situation and problem that you just they in all sectors of education, it's not set up to heal the planet in university. And anyone who thinks independently, so she was to actually present a paper to her professors on glyphosate and genetic modification, chances are she would not have done well in university. I remember when I was first studying at Deakin University in the early 90s, I was sitting in a lecture on dairy. And I'm looking up at the slides, and on the bottom right-hand corner is the Dairy Corporation's logo. They had made this slide. And the professor was presenting their slides, and I'm looking around going, does anyone else see a conflict of interest? And when I would write a paper on dairy, and I remember that professor, I said, what about the mucus forming properties of dairy? Oh, Sherry, I think you find that's largely psychosomatic. And then I wrote a paper on it, and there were lines through pages. So she wasn't even willing to open, her mind to even reading it. She just like, this is not the narrative. You're not going to pass this class if this is what you're trying to do, if you're trying to think critically and independently.
Right.
So, and that happens in many people in many institutions. They have to suppress their natural intuition and critical thinking and lie, go against their inner knowing and soul to get a degree. And they know, they learn early on, if you don't toe the line, you're not going to get a job, in that industry. And things aren't going to go well with you if you fight.
But then they succumb. That's what I don't get. And then it's like, it's such a self-violation,
Yeah, it
right?
is.
Like they're violating their beliefs, their true nature, their everything. And then it's like they forgot. They seem to forget over time.
It's a conditioning. And the thing is if you can get people to continually sell out their soul, push down, suppress that intuition, when it comes to saying job or jab, it becomes, much easier because you're already conditioned and primed for that.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's a horrifying state that we find ourselves in. So coming back to that and coming back to your work with Children's Health Defense and your interviews, are you interviewing anybody people that have been impacted directly one way or another with getting said jab?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
So
kind
I've
of stories are you
interviewed
getting?
people who have had loved ones who've died. People have been injured themselves, took it because they wanted to care for a family member, ended up, injured themselves. A firefighter took it because of family pressure. And recently I interviewed a man who lost his 35-year-old wife, who was perfectly healthy before the first jab. They were doing sprints around their local track. They have a gym in their house. They're inseparable. They have had a health practice, or he has a health practice that she run with 8 different practitioners. And after the first jab, she started to get sick and weak, uncharacteristically, couldn't get off the couch, couldn't think right. He got his doctor to do blood work on her and sent it to her doctor. And her doctor just ignored the blood work that his doctor said he's never seen blood work like this in his entire career. And the doctor said, no, you're fine for your second jab. And 5 weeks after the second jab, she died from liver and kidney failure as a result of the injection. But the doctors tried to convince him that she was a secret alcoholic consuming a 26 ounce or more of vodka a day. And he said, I think I would notice that in my wife. And when she got into the hospital, there was no withdrawal. So the head nurse in that department, he said, there's no way that that's alcoholism. There's no way you could drink what they're saying and not have any detox system. And the doctor said, well, she probably stopped drinking the 2 days before. And the nurse is saying that's not a 2-day detox.
Yeah.
And
No.
and even though she obviously had no alcohol in the hospital, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Even though the liver, he was willing to give her, half of his liver to help, and
Wow.
they were a match, and they wouldn't allow it because they said she's an alcoholic. I mean, it was so. Not only did she unjustly die thinking that she was doing the right thing for her customers, and also there was a personal reason they wanted to travel, but now these doctors were dishonoring her as a person, and because none of them wanted to admit that it was related to the jab.
And that's the thing, there's so many things wrong with what's going on, but the dishonoring of the lives of these people and how they lost their lives, and everybody's so much on their mighty high horse, like, died of COVID, save everybody from COVID, 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 COVID. I hate even saying that word, really.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then as we lose one person to this and we're covering it up or lying about it, we won't acknowledge it. Like, it's such a dishonoring of these people that did the right thing, which is shocking because they seem to be so health oriented, yet you voluntarily go put an experimental mix of foreign whatever. I mean, the stories that come out are more horrific day by day about what is being found in those things.
Yes.
I don't understand. Like, they made that choice. The doctor, how does he go home to his family if he has a family, or even live with himself, ignoring what was in that? And then after all that, you still go get another one. Like, I like, it's a horrifying loss. I don't want to belittle that in any way, but I don't understand how then you go and do it again.
It shows the level of programming and indoctrination that people are under this spell of the medical profession, and that's happened over centuries, where we don't question, we trust blindly, and it's a mixture of things. It's not just one thing. We have the idea we want to do well, we want our practice to be good. We've been told that we're, protecting other people by doing this, even though there's no proof of it. And we have selfish reasons, like we want to travel, go to restaurants, and don't want to have our natural rights restricted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the thing that just came up for me, is the reprehensible thing about this with children is that children are at zero risk, right? Here in Alberta, not one child died of COVID. And we have no record anywhere of a healthy child without any pre-existing comorbidities that died with COVID. So now we have plenty of deaths of children who were previously healthy dying post injection, and many more who are actually crippled or have myocarditis, and God knows what coming down the track. They admit they don't know. They haven't done proper studies on children to understand, we won't have even an inkling properly in 5 years. But we know that already children are being maimed and being killed by this. And when they're at zero risk of dying, the level of evil is incomprehensible unless you're a sociopath or a psychopath. You can't understand it.
Exactly.
And until you understand that it is a depopulation agenda, it is a control agenda, it's the only time things make sense, because without that kind of explanation, nothing makes sense. Nothing has made sense. The science that they're using, all the things that you just mentioned don't make sense. And I always say, when it doesn't make sense, you can bet it makes a lot of dollars.
Oh, that's a good way to say it. Absolutely. So back to the children then, do you know of any statistics in Canada and Alberta, like what's going on? I know we went away first. When we went away, the one day we found out a local kid under 30, I think he was 12 years old, died of an asthma attack. I'm like, you know what that is? And sure enough, I know we got it. So yeah. What are the statistics that you're hearing about children?
So in Canada, it's super hard. I'm just hearing stories of people, anecdotal stories. I heard from my mother. So a friend of hers reported that in a colony, some kind of colony, I don't know if it was Hutterites or whatnot, but 2 days post-jab of jabbing that colony, people died. And I asked her, I said,
oh, sorry, you just cut out for a sec. Sorry. Oh, sorry. After they jabbed it, then you cut out.
5 people died.
Within how long? 2 days.
2 days. Within 2 days, 5 people died. And I asked her the source, because I was like, we need to find a source. And he said, it's a personal friend of mine who lives in that colony, told him that 5 people died. So, the problem is the Canadian reporting system is far more corrupt than the American reporting system. At least in the American reporting system, they have 11 different adverse reaction reporting sites. Here in Canada, it's one. Only doctors can do it. It takes 45 minutes plus for them to do it. They don't get paid for that time. And every injury they report, they're kind of marked on a system. And what also happens is that they can file a report as an earnest doctor, and the reporting system will actually phone patients and say, sorry, we're not acknowledging that it was a vaccine injury. You're fine to get your second shot.
Wow.
So everyone's saying, oh, that's just anecdotal. What you're saying is just anecdotal. I thought, that's really interesting. When it was COVID and you were talking about your sister's brother's girlfriend's husband's wife, it was data and it was proof they died of COVID. Exactly. But I know someone personally that died 2 days after the shot, and it's anecdotal.
Exactly.
So unfortunately, we're in a lawless society right now, and we have to do that thing where we need to start to trust our eyes. How many of us have said, I don't know anyone who died of COVID? Don't know anyone. But I sure as hell know a lot of people who have died post-jab.
Right. And more. That's, yes.
We can't wait for government statistics to protect ourselves and take action.
Well, and they're not going to come out. They're lying. They're denying it. They're not even,
That's right.
If your kid stays home from school and didn't get a test, it's assumed to be COVID. So there's a rise in the numbers, yet that kid did not get myocarditis from the shot that he just got like a week ago. It's just beyond horrifying.
And it's really important to understand how they seed and plant information. So right now, they're talking about polio symptoms in kids, right? They're planting, this information to say polio and polio-like symptoms are breaking out. So you need to take the vaccine for children 5 to 11. Like, really, you're using that exact 5 to 11 before the vaccine rollout so that when they get vaccine injured
Yeah.
and they have polio-like symptoms, you can blame it on polio and not the actual jabs. And, they do all kinds of things like that. And I saw something today that I thought, just to be clear, there are no 5 to 11-year-olds. There's not a bunch of 5 to 11-year-olds presenting with myocarditis right now, just so you know. So when they do, and this does happen,
Oh,
just know it's not happening now. But once they roll that out,
yeah.
they can't blame it on anything else. There was
No.
a woman in the United States who went to a Walgreens to get the flu vaccine for her 2 children, 4 and 5-year-old, and the pharmacist actually gave the children full adult doses of the COVID shots, and they both have heart issues now. So, look, the level of corruption and injustice is so massive. The only thing that we can do is to become fierce mama and papa bears and protect our children with all of our might. I tell you, if I had school-age children right now that I was responsible for, I was in charge of, because I'm the parent, I would not have them in the school system. I
Oh,
don't trust
no.
them.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Even before COVID, what I've learned about what's happening education-wise, there's no way I'd have my children in that.
My
And
son
people
is,
are,
I was just gonna
sorry,
say, my son is 12. He's never been to school, very intentionally.
yeah,
Never. No way. It's just a propaganda brainwashing institution to create repeatable and just behavior that they're going to know, they're going to understand, right? They're going to not there. What's the word I'm trying to say? I can't even think of
program.
what, but program, but they're going to know how they're going to respond to different situations, right? This is what they're just training in these children. There is no way in hell my son would ever be
Yeah.
exposed to that. No way.
Yeah. And even just the level of COVID indoctrination, there's like these 6 pages of COVID information
Yes.
that kids fill out that it's pure propaganda. When my sister's granddaughter, the first day of school this year, she said 5 of her teachers showed the class COVID videos and vaccine videos, and 2 of the teachers showed 2 videos. And teachers were pulling students aside who weren't vaccinated to convince them that they needed to get vaccinated. They don't need to tell their parents, and that it's safe.
Yes.
And, it's like, to me, wow, you would not want to be a teacher if you told my child that.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's unbelievable. So if somebody has an adverse event here, has a story of
Yeah.
death or whatever, is there a way to, do you have any recommendations on how they can report that or how they can share their story?
Well, I'm interviewing victims of injury or family members of people who have died post-shot. So I'm definitely happy to get their story out to the world. And I can do that anonymously because some people are really afraid. And whatever way, you choose to have your story told, I promise I will honor and respect your wishes. And I will honor and respect, the person who has been injured or has passed because of it.
Okay, good. So we'll put a link down there, people. If you have a story a story to share, then we'll put you in contact with Sherry so that you can potentially get that out there, because this is not a time to be quiet. And if you've lost someone, I mean, you've got nothing to lose. Like if you've already lost a loved one, I mean, what else do you have to lose? Let's help somebody else prevent the loss of another loved one.
And I would really encourage any medical professionals who know about what's going on, and even people who work at hospitals who know and have, evidence of what's actually going on. This is not going to go away by your being silent. And even if you can tell me anonymously, I will get your word out. It is our silence that's contributing, and our complicitness that's making this go on. There were a lot of people who were silent about what was going on in hospitals because they wanted to keep their job, and they thought if they were just quiet, that these mandates wouldn't come through. No, it was actually your silence that allowed these mandates to actually come through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're silent, because you comply, it continues to move forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's little ways that you can do it, and you can help and support the movement, and you can start to build courage to come out, just even having a conversation with someone like me or you, Sasha. And the biggest thing, the piece of information, I think is most important for everyone who's listening to this is to quash that voice in you that says, who am I? Because I promise you, if you're stirred by this, if you're moved by this, if you're feeling, something, about this that is wrong, I promise you there's something that you can do. There's a conversation you can have, there's an interview that you can forward. There's a cause you can actually fund. You can support people in their businesses, who are actually stepping up to be vocal about this. There's so many ways that you can act, that you become part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's going to take all different forms of
Yes.
participation, right? So maybe you're not going to be one somebody who's speaking on a stage, but maybe you have funds, maybe you have other resources, maybe you have spare time. There's so many other ways to contribute to the cause, because I really don't know. Never mind the current, like the youngest generation right now. What is the next one going to be like? And is there even going to be another one after that? Like when you look at, an Indigenous culture, they're thinking 7 generations before, 7 generations after. There is no way at this rate that there's going to be a 7th generation, not one that's natural, that's naturally conceived, eating natural food and is healthy. There is absolutely no way. So this is what we have to look at, people. This is the future of humanity on this planet. And if you don't understand that or see that yet, and you're not understanding that message, then turn off the news and look at the people, listen to the people that risk their credentials and maybe even their lives to tell you things that they are not benefiting from. I think that's a really good clue of a worthy news source.
Very important. And the other thing is, because I often get people phoning me up and saying, Sherry, how can I survive this? How can, I survive? And I said, well, number one, you're not going to survive this alone. You can't just take care of yourself and your family and get through this. We need to be connected. We need to be united. We need to be doing this from a place of love. We need to find people who have our back. And in order to find that and feel safe within that, you need to be the kind of person who has other people's back.
Yes. Yes. And so that's where maybe we could talk a little bit about Life Force Canada, unless there's something else you want to talk about, like Children's Health Defense. Is there anything with that work that what are the important messages around that work that you're doing? Because I know you feel deeply for it. So anything else that you want to talk about around that?
I just want to show you something. This is completely self-indulgent. Okay. Look at that little one.
Oh, that's her. That's Willow.
That's Willow.
Aww.
Okay.
Yeah.
Willow's actually the result of residential schools. So she belongs to a family with history that, that healing. We talk about 7 generations. Just the residential schools alone will take more than 7 generations to heal.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the greatest inheritance that some people take for granted that just comes through their womb, in their body, through their sperm, right? We just need to be really thinking of them and their future. And you don't have to have children to do that, and there's some way that you can help and support. That you can help and support. So go to childrenshealthdefense.ca, join our newsletter, help support us, spread the interviews and the videos. So that's what I would say about that.
Okay. Thank you. And such important work. It's just, and they don't just talk about facts, right? Like Children's Health Defense is concerned with anything that's causing harm to children in any way, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So the other question you asked, I'm sorry, I forgot that you were...
Oh no, and I was just, okay, well, I was thinking because it made me think of Life Force Canada, because you're saying you will not do it alone. And this is the big thing right now. Community is so important more than ever before. And they know this. This is why they're separating everyone, right? And keeping people working at home alone and not spending time with their friends and loved ones and family and whatever. So Life Force Canada is an organization that both you and I are a part of. You've been there longer than me, and it's an organization that's looking to build a different world. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I am a member of Life Force Canada, and Sasha's, we're on the Health and Wellness Committee. We're developing a strategy and a plan for a true healthcare system here in Alberta. And obviously, we want it everyone in their own respective provinces are doing that. The thing I love about Life Force Canada is it's incredibly positive, and it's not just people vision boarding about the world we want to live in. We are on committees. We are developing resources and strategies and plans for every sector of the world right now. So if that's, family services, healthcare, policing, media, food security, every single area, we have committees and people working on the ground to develop plans and strategies and resources now and leading into the future to build a world that's actually built on serving humanity and not corrupt organizations and governments. So it's, and I said to you, Sasha, that, even if, the world is, taken over and life force is taken over by nefarious forces or whatever, I will never regret the time that I spend in there, because I am spending active time, not just talking about it, but doing things that are building a better planet and future for our children.
Absolutely. And that's what we need. Like, we're going to look back on this time with horror. For those of us who didn't do anything, we're going to look back and say, wow, I could have done something and I didn't. And what are we going to say to our kids? What are we going to say to are there going to be great grandchildren there to even hear from you? That's what I just think about the kids from a child advocacy perspective. I am just shocked at how little there is. But I know, but it's like you said before, it's tied to so many factors of I'm not good enough, my voice doesn't matter, and all these other things, despite even if someone feels that there's something wrong going on, they might be gagged for other reasons and not necessarily because they believe what's actually happening, what we're being told.
And with Life Force Canada, I think what I'm seeing is that people from all walks of life are being heard and their contribution is valued. So it doesn't matter what the letters you have before or after your name, or the numbers in your bank account. If you come to these groups, there are think tanks and committees and all kinds of ways that you can contribute, that your critical thinking, that your pure intent and your hard work will be valued over any experience that might be, seen as higher up, someone who's higher up than you. It's that going back to that thing about their truck drivers, and, garbage men right now, and women who are actually more educated on issues than people with the letters before and after their name. And Absolutely. You will find a place where your voice is valued, and there'll be a job for you no matter what.
Exactly. So check that out, people, because it's really daunting to think, like, people can't fathom creating a whole new way of living. It is so big. But when you're with this massive group of people who are self-organizing to create it, it really takes the load off a little bit and helps you vision what could be possible. So that's lifeforcecanada.ca. Is that what that is for the Canadian?
I believe it's lifeforce.ca.
Okay, lifeforce.ca. I'll put that link.
But you may want to check that.
Okay, I will double check that for sure. And for those of you in Alberta, there's an Alberta contingent, and there's one for, I think it actually goes globally, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah. So
definitely
seek it out. And if they don't have one in your area, start it with, some friends. You can actually start it, Yeah.
There you go. And that's what we need to do. We need grassroots efforts the world over and just create this wave of creation, right? Creation. Okay. And so are you taking new clients now? You are working, like, I don't even know how you have time. You have like the baby and Life Force and like your company, like, how are you doing? So are you seeing clients right now, one-on-one? You said you have this Unity, what did you say? Unity Life?
Living in Unity.
Living in Unity.
Yeah, living in Unity. So I am absolutely taking clients and seeing clients. And I do a wide variety of coaching, from food coaching to sugar addiction, helping people see sugar addiction and building up their immunity. So, and vax injury. So all of those things I'm doing. And it's really interesting. I am busy with all these different things, but I'm crafting it in a way that it just kind of flows into one another, and I feel my weeks filling up beautifully instead of stressfully. And I seem what it feels like as I just go from one thing that fills me up to another thing to another thing, and like the meetings that we've had, it requires resources, from me to manage, and try to, take care of people. But I get so much out of it, and I'm so inspired by the people that I'm working with, and even my clients, so the fellow who lost his wife, I've checked in on him at least 5 times,
Yeah.
and we have conversations. So I really, honestly, Sasha, I found my salvation in service, and
Oh,
I've
it's
never been
beautiful.
more happy or proud of my life. There
Beautiful.
was a time in my life where I was picked up at, airports, in limousines, with the card and the people.
Wow.
And now I'm like finding my way through a park and with a baby in my hand, to give a free talk. And I can honestly say I've never been more proud of what I'm
Mhm.
doing.
Oh, that's amazing. But maybe when you mentioned that guy who lost his wife, do you know of any resources for people that are dealing with loss right now that they can go to?
So it's tricky. So I have suggested to him that he serve a notice of liability to his doctors, the doctors that actually treated her. Certainly, the doctor that saw the blood work and still told her to go for the second shot. Um, it's a process because it's difficult because people are grieving, and there's
Hmm.
people grieve differently. But get in touch. I'll find the right people for you to
Okay.
connect with. Um, but use your grief powerfully, and so that those you lost didn't die in vain.
Absolutely. And then coming back, so I keep having different ideas come up, some bouncing back and forth and back to your philosophy. So, what are some of the overarching pillars of the philosophy that you have for creating and building health?
Well, I look at the longest living, healthiest cultures on the planet. The title from my book that got published, the publisher chose "Return to Food: The Life-Changing Anti-Diet," but the title I wanted is "Return to Food: How Going Back is the Way Forward."
Oh, I like that.
Thanks. That's when I actually go back to, reprinting it. It's out of print right now. That will be the title it will
Mhm.
proceed with. So I believe that everything that we need and want is available to us, within us, through us, and in our natural environment. So one of the philosophies I teach is nature's principle. So nature tells us what to eat and the quantities to eat it in by how easily it's obtained in nature. So that which is most abundant, we're meant to have most of. Harder to obtain in nature, we're meant to have less of it. And if you cannot get it in nature, not only do we not need it, it's harmful to the body and the planet. So what's good for the body is good for the planet, and what's good for the planet is good for the body without exception. And when you can actually start to live that way, or the closer you can, start to live that way, you're going to find that you health will be restored naturally, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And so I'm not perfect at that. I'm still working towards that, but I recognize that as truth, and it resonates deeply within, in every part of me. And I've been teaching that philosophy for almost 20 years now,
Mm.
and it resonates with a lot of people who are completely disconnected from their body and the planet.
Mhm.
So
So
that's just
thinking,
one of them.
okay, sorry, was there more? Was there more you want to build on that?
Oh, I was just going to say there's the consumption concept, which I talked about. There's the
Love
lethal
that.
recipe. That's what's making us sick.
The
Pick your poison.
lethal recipe, did you say?
Lethal,
Okay.
lethal.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's, I often, if I'm speaking to Indigenous people, I'll say, do not eat the white man's food. The white man, the white man brought you white alcohol, it brought you white poisons, and it brought you white sugar, flour, salt, oils, and chemicals. Bannock is not an original indigenous food.
Ah.
It's you made lemonade from lemons. Lemons are much healthier, but you added sugar into it, so that you made something called the lethal recipe using the white man's ingredients, right? And so
Mhm.
it's every culture that introduced that. If you look at the work of Weston A. Price, every culture that introduced what I call this lethal recipe then introduced what we call lifestyle diseases.
Yeah.
And as we eliminate the lethal recipe, we will find that health will be restored.
And so referring to the work of Rustin Price, like, are you a proponent of traditional foods, traditional food preparation, and those overarching principles of the Weston Price Foundation?
So I'm a big fan of what you had said about traditional foods and traditional food preparation, and absolutely, like, the recipes that you will find that I advocate and do are, they're based on the slow principle of seasonal, local, organic, and whole. So that's kind of how I work. But one of the things I stress is that there is no one way of eating. It is the absence of processed food that is the key. So our planet is environmentally dependent on us not all eating the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a diet that's, consumed in the Arctic, which 80%, that traditional diet was seal blubber. Some of it was raw.
Mm-hmm.
Not my ideal. I often say that, I don't know about past lives or future lives, but I know I came to this incarnation for the food, if there is such a thing. And chocolate is God's way of saying he loves us and wants us to be happy, but I'd rather live, 100 years with chocolate than 120 years without chocolate. It's just, I try and find really good chocolate that's minimally processed and actually has nourishing properties rather than is made with refined sugars and chemicals. So the whole concept of there being one diet that works, I would refute that. And different bodies resonate with different foods, but 100% of the human species does not resonate health-wise with the processing and removal of nutrients in our food and the introduction of toxic chemicals.
Absolutely, I agree. And when you said talking about the relative abundance of food,
Yeah.
but that has changed over time, because what used to be there, and then when we started farming and
Yes.
then monocropping and everything, that's
Yes.
really changed that. So how are people going to recognize what's actually supposed to be out there?
So very few people are living a truly natural life and, subsisting on what we can obtain in nature and in the wild. And you're spot on in saying that farming is not natural. People say, oh, I grew up with a natural diet on a farm. It's like, well, that depends on the farm that, I do know of certain colonies that will grow organic food for themselves and grow conventional food to sell, at the markets. So the farming is, as diverse as, someone saying they're a chef. There are chefs who work in prisons who basically open packets and throw into, right. And then there are chefs who, are high-end. I worked in high-end restaurants that are, doing the most incredible things with food and massive wastage, by the way. And I wouldn't want to eat either of those ways. So finding a natural way of eating right now, unless you're willing to grow all your own food, and kudos to you if you are. I'm horticulturally retarded, so I kill things. I did manage to grow some potatoes this year successfully and a few tomatoes, but it's not my gift. People say you're a chef, you should be good at that. It's like, no, we're gifted at killing them. We boil them, we chop them up, we roast them. I kill plants, I don't grow them. Anyway, but that's why we're meant to live in community. So someone else would grow it and I would prepare it beautifully. Yeah. So, but right now, farmers markets for me, certainly, in great climates, where they can grow all year round, are ideal. But we don't live in an ideal world right now. We have to reclaim that, start to grow. And in areas like where we live, we have to learn how to preserve our foods and, and start to understand what is more natural and more abundant in our area, what we grow and subsist on. And when you start to do the research, you realize that even in a place, in the middle of Canada, there's quite an abundance that we can actually source and produce that's still relatively natural and will be nourishing, energizing, and protective to our body.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm a big proponent as well as seasonal. I too used to teach. Now I didn't travel the world like you, and I never got picked up in a limo anywhere, but I did do a lot of classes and speaking. And 2020 was actually going to be a much bigger year for that, and that all got canceled. And I really miss it because I love doing my seasonal talks and talk about, the energy of the food. What's available to you right now? Why are you getting kiwis from the other side of the world in the middle of, when we should be having soups and stews? So it's not even just the type of food, it's how you prepare the food depending on the temperature outside and what has recently been harvested, what is freshly growing, what can we do? And I really miss that. So I really resonate with that. And I think in that lies the answer. People just see it, the simple answer to so many of our global issues with, the transporting of stuff, the economy, and supporting our local people that care to grow good quality food for us. Like there's so many things, the trashing of the soil and the polluting of everything. There's so many ways just in that one thing. People would even choose a certain percentage of their food to come from local people creating good products or growing good food or animals or whatever it might be. Such a way to make change. And you got to eat. So just switch how you eat.
Yeah, I tell a story in my book called The Crazy Banana Story, where for most of my adult life, I couldn't eat bananas. I loved them, but I would get a cramping, nauseous, kind of aching feeling in my gut every time I had a banana. And when I had my cooking school, I got a shipment of, from my greengrocer. He would select stuff for me that I ordered, and I was gravitating towards these bananas. And I ate one, and it was so delicious. It was biodynamic banana. And it was so good. It was like that perfect mix of creamy and tart and banana flavor. It was so delicious. And I thought, I don't care about the pain. I had 2 more bananas. So I had 3 bananas and I had no pain. And I thought, that's interesting. I wonder if it's, actually, I first thought, I'm over my banana allergy. That's great. And I went to a work do, and I had a banana, and then I got that cramping, horrible feeling again. I went, biodynamic? Yes. Conventional? No. So a few years later, I came across a biodynamic banana seller in Queensland. I was living up there for a time. And I had one of his bananas and said, oh, that's like that banana I had back then. And I said, do you have many people who can't eat bananas? And he said, yeah. He said, in fact, most of my clients can't eat conventional bananas. He said the young fellow working for me, when he used to eat conventional bananas, he would actually bring up blood. And now he can eat 5 or 6 a day and has no problem. And the guy's literally, as I'm talking, saying, yep, that's right. The fellow behind him, so working for him. And he said, would you like to know why? And I said, of course I want to know why. And he said, I used to be a conventional banana grower. And he started to tell me about the standard practices that were done in the banana industry and the chemicals they used. But the thing I'll never forget is him actually physically saying, we used to take the same poison used to kill white ants or termites and take that poison and inject it into the stalk of the banana.
Oh my goodness.
Then once it was picked, we would spray it as well for chemicals, and then we would dip it in a solution to prevent any funguses or spiders, when we shipped them overseas. And I remember the hair standing up on the back of my neck and just going, oh my God, I was never allergic to bananas. I was allergic to the way they were grown, right, and treated. So that happens. Even our organic bananas can be dipped in a solution and brought over here. And, it's fascinating to see animals, when they're given a choice between biodynamic, conventional, or biodynamic and organic, they'll always choose the organic and the biodynamic. There was a study done at the Copenhagen Zoo where the monkeys always peeled and ate the bananas. And one day the zookeeper got in a batch of organic bananas and he thought, this is really weird. They're eating the whole banana, skin and all. So he did a little test and he got conventional bananas, put them in one area, organic in another area. They ate the organic ones whole, skin on first, and only when they were gone, they went to the conventional ones, peeled them, and ate them.
So interesting. Animals, they know.
Yeah, and even the little Willow I look after, she will eat bananas when I get them, the organic ones. But her grandma, who doesn't know yet about this, who will buy conventional bananas, she won't eat the conventional banana. She's like, I'm not interested.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And to keep that intuition and that knowing intact, that right,
Yeah.
that's so important for our children. We're like, oh, eat this,
Yes.
eat this, eat this. You have to finish this. It's like, but maybe they're not eating it for a reason. And maybe we need to trust that and stop forcing them to stop trusting themselves. So
Yes.
that's
Yes. Yes. Amen. Mama.
yes. Oh, so okay. So what out of all you, we've been going for quite a while now. This has been great. So many different areas, where we've been going, which I knew we would because you have so many different life experiences. But what what did I just have there saying? Just like generally, out of all you're doing right now, what are some messages that you have for people? What do you think is most important for them to know at this time in the world?
Um,
What do you want to share?
yeah, I think it comes back to all of it. Kind of comes back to stop listening to the voice of who am I, and start asking yourself, who am I? Like, who am I? What am I passionate about? What is burning in me? You don't have to have an expertise to be part of the solution, right? Who am I to change my behaviors and way I eat and be better than my family? No, who am I? I am a sacred, sovereign, spiritual being in a physical body. I've only got one life, and I get to do something amazing with it, or I can just follow the herd and the crowd mindlessly. You know, um, all of the message everything that you've asked me about, Sasha, really comes back down to that. Is that I know wherever you are, that if you're watching this and it's resonating with you, it's because your soul is telling you there's something more for you. I always, in Return to Food, I have an illustration I use that says addiction is the body's way of saying you're not listening to your soul in your life. And so once you start to listen to your soul in your life and you follow that voice, and you, like when I said, how can I serve? How can I serve? And be bold. Just ask, volunteer. If you're not getting to volunteer because you're unvaccinated, I promise you, there's so many ways you're needed in the world that you can serve that will not only benefit the world, but will help you go to sleep at night and think, I'm doing something really good with my life. So even if I don't wake up tomorrow morning, I'm super proud of the choices I'm making and how I'm contributing to a better planet.
Absolutely. What a great message. Absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of people are not going to bed with those feelings and thoughts right now, right? A lot of people are, though. That being said, it's not all evil. There's a lot more evil
No.
than I ever realized. However,
Yeah.
there's also amazing people doing amazing things. And if you haven't found them, there are in your community, undoubtedly, people that are working together and standing up and organizing, and just it's time to support each other how we've never supported each other before, because we've never had a worldwide event like this affect
Yeah.
everybody across the board.
Yeah. Yes,
So I
exactly.
really appreciate your effort and your time you've taken with me. Now, if people want to get a hold of you, where are the main areas that you would like them to go?
So if you're looking for supplementation, go to livingimmunity.com.
Okay.
If you're looking to beat sugar addiction, go to sweetfreedomlife.com. If you're looking for some great recipes, just Google Sherry Strong and recipes. I've got 2 YouTube channels with tons of
Oh,
content and recipes
nice.
on there, so super easy to find. I haven't been populating YouTube because I don't want to support it anymore, because it's such a it's such a tool of censorship. But there's tons of material there for you. If you want to find out, children'shealthdefense.ca, join, membership, and Life Force Canada. They're there. And if you want to speak to me directly, personally, it's Sherry at sherrystrong.com. So it's like a strong Sherry, only reversed.com. And I will help you in the way I can help you. And if I can't, I'll try and find someone who can.
Amazing. Such selfless service. Imagine if we all would just give over to selfless service, and how much we would gain in that if we did that. So thank you, Sherry. I really super appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you, Sasha, for seeing me, acknowledging, and giving me, space and airtime, asking great questions, conversing with me, and offering your perspective and wisdom, and caring enough to do the work, and having sufficient humility to to give other people like me a voice. I appreciate it.
People like you make it easy. So thank you. Okay. All right. Bye, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please share and tune in for the next one. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's going to be good. You know that. So thank you, Sherry, and everyone else for tuning in. Bye for now. Okay. Whoa. Did I stop recording? Oh, wait. I ended it. Shit. Oh, wait. No. Cancel. Oh, but I'm going to have to.